Welcome to the Star Wars Canon Cantina, a show where we try to answer the question, who is Luke Skywalker, before the release of Star Wars Episode 9. My name is Jesse Aiken, and I'm here with Mike Carpenter, and we love Luke Skywalker, and we want to dive more into this with you guys. We appreciate you guys listening to the last episode, and today we're going to dive into Episode 2, Empire Strikes Back.
Episode 2 chronologically, but episode 5 canonically. That's
Perfect.
Right. Jesse and I have been Star Wars best friends for more than 25 years, and even though we're in different states now, we still share a love of the wars, and we've decided that in the year and a half that we have until the release of Episode 9, let's analyze Luke Skywalker and the things that have divided the fan base after Episode 8, The Last Jedi. See if we can come to an understanding of the different perspectives of Luke or the different issues that people have with The Last Jedi. But we're going to really try to get to know who is Luke Skywalker until Episode 9 comes out.
Yeah, guys, and we hope this is going to be educational not only for us, but for you. We're going to go through all the media that involves Luke and his arc. So that's going to be the films, the books, the comics, the video games, the tabletop games, the list goes on. The good news here is you guys get to sit back and listen to our research and our dive into this, our assessments, the best we can make them, because there's a lot of content on this character and we want to know who he is. So today we're going to look at this in a deep, deep way, Mike, the second film of the original trilogy, where we get a lot more Luke.
So Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, is widely regarded as the best Star Wars film. Usually thought of as just one of the better movies of all time. I don't want to say greatest movies of all time, depending on what list you're looking at or whatever. But
there's lists though. It makes
people
those
love
100
this
movie
movie.
lists.
People love this movie.
Yeah, it's made a lot of top 50 and top 100 movie lists, up there with a lot of the greats. So it's a hard one to tackle. It's serious. It was made in 1980. George wrote it, but not direct it like he did in New Hope. It was directed by Irving Kershner. If I always mispronounce his name. But
well, you've got a dog named Irving, but it was Irvin Kershner, one of his film teachers at USC.
Yep. And so with George driving the story, especially with co-writing efforts from Lawrence Kasdan.
And with an increase in budget after the success of Episode 4.
Yes. 20th Century Fox was taking him seriously after this, which was really interesting. But as you guys might have heard in our first episode, we have a long history of Star Wars love. And Empire, I think, Mike, helped found a lot of that love. What's really interesting is I feel like when you're younger and you watch Empire, parts of it can seem slow. But the more you watch it, even when you're younger, the better it gets. That's been my take on it. And adults just seem to get it right off the bat, but I'm just talking about kids.
And I agree, but I have read a lot of perspectives of people like us who are we're in our early 30s, people who are a little older than us that have older kids. The younger generation, they see this and they think it's a little slow. It doesn't rank at the top for them, which is fine because they grew up with different Star Wars movies. And just to give you a little more context before we dive into Empire Strikes Back, we're trying to explore Luke Skywalker as a character and the division of fandom that came out of Last Jedi. I rank The Last Jedi as my favorite of the new Star Wars movies under the Disney Lucasfilm banner. Jesse ranks it as his least favorite. Not that he hates it or he hates everyone that likes it, but it's just in last place of the 4 movies we've gotten so far.
Sure, yeah. And when there's, a lot of Star Wars films, when there's 10 Star Wars films, it's somewhere else. But it's a good discussion to have.
11.
Like 11.
Yeah, because that Clone Wars monstrosity came out in
theaters. No.
As
someone who's
live action, there's 10. Live action, there's 10.
Yeah, I'll preface and say someone who's a diehard fan of the Clone Wars show, that film is unwatchable.
I will absolutely agree with that. So,
and it is almost inconsistent with the show. The only thing consistent is the artwork. That's it.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, but we'll get to that later. But see, so Empire might be slower for kids, and I've actually learned a lot from kids that they tend to prefer, in this order, the original trilogy: Return of the Jedi, New Hope, Empire. And they tend to go like all three prequels, then Return of the Jedi, then New Hope, then Empire. So for them, Empire is like the sixth furthest down.
Well, as we all know, kids are stupid because prequels should never be above the original trilogy, even though the prequels have their redeeming qualities, except for Attack
Oh
of the
yes.
Clones.
Oh man, Attack of the Clones. What a tough movie.
Anyway,
Yeah.
there is a lot of movie to dive into in
Okay.
The Empire Strikes Back. So,
Well, before that, Mike, I want to review our questions we ask with every arc about Luke.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
for the audience out there.
Ever since Luke disappeared, people have been looking for him.
I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to rescue you.
A lot of rumors, stories.
And I became a legend.
People that knew him best.
Luke.
Young Skywalker. Luke.
It's all true.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
All of it.
So what state is Luke in at the beginning of Empire Strikes Back? That's going to be our first question. The second question is, how do the events of the story impact his development as a character? Spoiler alert, there's a lot with the Force especially.
This is the movie where it happens.
And then number 3, does this version of Luke in Empire Strikes Back 1980 fit with the Luke we meet in TLJ 2018? And we'll get there.
Yeah, so we're going to see how a 38-year difference, fits with a character in terms of how the actor portrays him and how he's received on screen and everything. But let's go ahead and start with that first question. What state is Luke in at the beginning of this story? So this story starts 3 years in I believe both the Legends canon and the new Disney canon. It's about 3 years after the events of Episode 4: A New Hope.
Right. So at the end of New Hope, we see the rebellion winning the struggle against the Empire by destroying the Death Star, which we know is a super weapon they have. But we're also led to think that the Empire is all over the galaxy, but we don't know. And the start of this movie, we see the rebellion on a remote planet in the Hoth system, and they're on this small little base on a snow planet hiding from the Empire. It's been years. So the Empire is as strong as ever. And this was a wake-up call for me as a kid because I honestly thought that most of the Empire was on the Death Star. That's what I was led to believe, at least.
That makes total sense based off of what you had seen in just looking at Episode 4. Now that we've got so much expanded canon and like Rogue One, we see all these Star Destroyers and the assembly of the Death Star and everything. We know the Empire is much bigger and spanning the entire known galaxy.
Right.
But if you had just started with the movie, you'd be like, oh yeah, most of them are dead. They won.
Yeah, in case in point of that, like, and I'm not sure the full answer to this just via the films, but when, like, say the Imperial Stormtroopers are all over Mos Eisley, I thought they were just all over Mos Eisley looking for the droids. I didn't think, oh, there's probably a small Imperial occupation here. You know what I mean? Things like that. I didn't think in those terms. I thought like, oh, Vader's Star Destroyer carried a bunch of men around looking for, our heroes. When truthfully, the Empire is kind of everywhere. They have garrisons everywhere. They have big bases everywhere. They have Star Destroyers keeping planets. And Tarkin says it, keeping the systems in line through fear. That's how we'll run this system.
That's right.
This battle station.
But when we encounter Luke at the very beginning of The Empire Strikes Back, the rebels have managed to fall off the Empire's radar. The Empire is searching for them. They're on Hoth. Luke is on his Tauntaun,
yes,
exploring Hoth. What's he doing? He's setting up like a sensor or something like that.
Sensor net. Yeah, we see the probe droid land. Han, old buddy, do you read me? That's the first line we hear. Great line. So now we know Han and Luke have been friends for 3+ years. They already had great banter from the start in the cantina. So now we're just assuming. I told you in the last episode, Han is Luke's family net now.
There's
it's
not
more than
enough
just a
life
friend
on this planet to fill a space cruiser.
Exactly. And Han's like, I'm going back, and Luke's like, well, I just saw a meteorite hit the ground here. I'm going to go check it out. And just as he says that, he says, what'd you smell, girl? Something to his Tauntaun. He gets attacked by the snow monster, which we now know is the Wampa. And the Wampa chokes out the Tauntaun, knocks Luke out, and drags him by his leg to some bad place, we're led to believe.
So that's a pretty bold move in 1980. You start off the new film with the hero of the first film getting his butt kicked by a monster.
Yeah. On a snow planet, which we've never seen before, which is really cool, expanding the universe.
And that boldness will carry through to other parts of The Empire Strikes Back for sure.
Yeah. So we see some scenes now with the Empire looking for the rebellion, Vader interrogating his officers. We get a lot stronger Vader
I
here
love
too.
the tension between Ozzel, Piet, and Vader. There's one other officer there.
Nita.
Nita. That's it. The like competition of who's going to be the best, who's going to be Vader's favorite.
Yeah, and the probe droid. We'll get to that, but they're sending probe droids all over the galaxy, but they're still looking for the rebels at this point. One of the following scenes, we're jumping forward a little bit here. We see Luke in the cave with the Wampa, and this is great because we get to see that Luke has evolved in his training, and it's been 3 years, so we assume he's been practicing Obi-Wan's exercises.
Obi-Wan's exercises that he learned in
a couple weeks
at least one day, at max 2 weeks of hyperspace travel on the Falcon. And here's another point where we should another segment where we should point out that we watched 2 different versions of this film.
Yes, so we mentioned that in the last episode. I'll go ahead and mention this episode for those of you who didn't hear the last episode. But in keeping with our tradition of this, Mike watched the 2011 Blu-ray release,
which I believe is the most current canon version.
It is. They've re-released it recently, but no changes were made to it. It just has a different box art, which I don't think is as good. But I'm watching the Harmy's despecialized fan edits, which are essentially full 1080p MKV Blu-ray quality VHSs. So, but I got to give the guy more credit than that, and we'll link this in some of the show notes for you guys. But absolutely, this guy has gone to painstakingly effort to reestablish the despecialized, the untouched versions of these films. I was telling Mike, he took multiple sources from multiple files and formats to create these versions, and did color correction. And Mike, he did some crazy things where he recreated matte paintings.
But this is the film he had to do the least work on because Empire Strikes Back had the least special additions to it.
So bringing you guys back into that scheme, Mike, you saw the modern Wampa, which I do love.
Modern Wampa is great.
But then I saw the old Wampa, which I love too, because it has that Hitchcock element to it where you hear the sounds, see nothing. Hear the sounds, see this just kind of like a leg walking by the glaciers. Hear the sounds, see the other leg moving forward. You never see the Wampa's face. You just see him coming closer to Luke. Meanwhile, all this time, Luke is reaching for the Legacy Saber, and it is starting to move. So us as an audience with no other knowledge of Star Wars, we're assuming this is the Force. The Force theme starts swelling, playing, and he eventually pulls the lightsaber to his hands and cuts himself free from this upside down icicle,
which
fabrication.
If you consider the physics of that and how the Wampa accomplished that, it starts to break the movie. Don't think about that. But
have you not heard how he does it? How the Wampa does it to his prey?
I apparently don't remember. How does he freeze Luke's feet in the ceiling? Now I want you to tell me.
So apparently the Wampa, what he does with things he wants to freeze dry for later, which is what he did with Luke. He sticks him up in the ceiling and he blows his hot breath on the ice for a while. And then he holds it there and Hoth apparently is so cold that it just immediately freezes.
Well, that's absolutely stupid, but it's fitting for, a silly sci-fi movie. It's fine. I got no problem with that.
But Mike, like I said in the preview episode, my mind is full of recesses of useless knowledge, and that's one of them right there.
Well,
that's a lot more intense than Max Rebo's band.
Oh man,
knowing Max Rebo's band, that's a lot more intense that I know the Wampa does that.
Well,
some weird
as I talked
canon.
about in our first episode where we explored Luke in episode 4, A New Hope, I mentioned that the special edition actually adds a lot to the X-wing assault on the Death Star. It adds a lot of context to the different engagements. I actually like that the special edition adds more context to the Wampa encounter. You actually, it's perhaps less horror movie-esque and less scary, but you actually understand what's happening a lot more in the canon.
Yeah, he's eating the tauntaun, and then he hears Luke moving around, moving the lightsaber, and he stands up and runs over there.
Yeah.
So it's nice.
If anyone else thought that the bottom of the hilt of the lightsaber, like the parts looked like it had some sort of smiley face on there, tweet us at Canon Cantina, because I've thought that since I was a little kid. I was like, oh, those like rivets look like there's like eyes and a little smiley face on there.
Interesting. You know, Mike, I will mention there are some really good changes in the special edition, though. For instance, I just rewatched the despecialized edition, and I know this is a thing that exists before I saw this, but you know, when the when the Wampa originally strangles the Tauntaun, you actually see the puppeteer's arm, the bottom of his arm. He's wearing a black long sleeve shirt. You see his arm,
Ah,
the
nice.
shirt, and all the special edition did was literally do like a 0.5 zoom. And the arm is no longer, you know what I mean? You only see the Wampa. Like, you don't see that arm anymore. Just little subtle things like that are actually worth it, but it's also kind of funny. And they're kind of quirky too, you know? It's kind of like the Stormtrooper hitting his head in New Hope, which I regret we didn't mention in the last episode.
Oh,
but-
we didn't mention how that guy was actually Snoke, and that's how Snoke gets the scar on his forehead.
Oh, you nailed it. You found it out.
So,
this is good.
so moving on, though, Luke defeats the Wampa. He cuts his arm off. He escapes. the
Stumbles
cave.
out.
And
Stumbles
he's like,
out into
oh,
the snow.
hey, now I'm in,
The freezing cold.
yeah, and I'm going to die out here. But then he sees the vision of Ben Kenobi.
Yeah, he says, you must go to the Dagobah system. He says, Dagobah system? There you find Yoda, the Jedi Master, instructed me.
If the phrase phoning it in existed in 1980, Alec Guinness definitely phoned this in.
Just coming in and being the Force Ghost.
Yeah. Which I don't fault him for, because he didn't think it was going to last past the first movie. But you must go to the Dagobah system. He didn't give a crap about what he was saying.
You mean compared to the first movie? Maybe.
Right.
Yeah, but they kept him on, and it works. So, you know, something I noticed this time around, Mike, has nothing to do with Luke's arc, but and I'm curious if this is in Return of the Jedi, because I haven't watched Return of the Jedi in about 6 months. But now that I've seen it, I can't unsee it. But being a guy with a beard, I noticed these things. In Empire, Obi-Wan's beard a lot shorter. It's like Alec didn't even have time to grow it back out to the length that was in New Hope. So it's like they're just like, it's fine. You're a ghost.
I have not
It's like,
thought
so I
about
guess he
that.
trimmed his beard in the Force Netherworld, as Yoda calls it.
As part of the segment of the population that is in their early 30s and still can't grow a full beard, I don't look for those things. But yeah, that's a good point.
Well, you know, you're familiar with the Obi-Wan beard, including Ewan's version, where the chin is much longer than the rest. And in Empire, it's kind of all just one length. Like he wasn't fully there yet, where he hadn't grown the length.
You say I'm familiar with that, but I've never thought that much about Obi-Wan's beard. Then again,
yeah.
I don't look like Obi-Wan Kenobi either, like you do.
Whoops. Yeah, I noticed these things. So that immediately takes us to Han saving Luke. I thought they smelled bad on the outside,
Name your
all that
sex
good
tape.
stuff. Yeah, that too. And keeping this PG, Mike. Good job. And then we see Luke in the back to tank. And he wakes up. And then we go to a great scene where I guess you don't know everything about women yet, is what Leia says to Han. Gives Luke a giant kiss.
Yeah, that's going to get awkward later.
Yeah, but right now they have no idea. And it's really just more a way to Leia's just pissing Han off, you know?
Who's scruffy looking?
Yeah. And Han also says, that's 2 you owe me, Junior. 2. So he saved Luke in the trench now, and he saved Luke from the Wampa freezing death sort of thing. So
I do think that, it still fits with Han's character that was helped to be established by Solo, a Star Wars story. He can't help but be the good guy. He can't help but go out and look for his friend of 3 years now. And he finds him and he saves him. Then Zev Seneska in Rogue 2 finds him. Nice of you to drop by after I did all the hard work of finding him, kind of deal.
yeah, you're right. He's trying to hide that, though, still. And we see Han trying to get out of the whole being in the rebellion. He's like, oh, I got to get out of here. I'm a dead man, to the bounty hunters. And, General Riken and Leia both are like, yeah, whatever. So, but the probe droid lands. Han and Chewie deal with it. It explodes. Han's like,
Which is a great scene, by the way. Chewie acting as the bait with like the snow on his face and everything. I love that scene. I didn't hit
Han
it
does the
very
flank.
hard.
I must set a self-destruct or something like that. And they say, an Imperial probe droid. The Empire already knows we're here. So then we have the attack on Echo Base. Yeah, exactly. And they have the attack on Echo Base. And you see Luke boarding his snowspeeder with Dak, who we assume now Luke's been a pilot for 3 years in the rebellion. So we assume he has relationships with all the pilots.
So now we can accept that Luke is actually a good pilot, as opposed to A New Hope, where he goes from biplane to F-18.
Biplane. Yeah, now he's been doing this for 3 years, and he's also the guy that blew the Death Star, so I think they're letting him fly some X-Wings.
That's right.
He's also Rogue Leader, which we find out. So we find out there's a Rogue Squadron named aptly after Rogue One, the group, and Rogue One, the film, but we also knew that there was a Rogue Squadron before the Rogue One film existed, and Luke's the Rogue Leader.
That's
and
right.
Dak
So
is his co-pilot.
in Rogue Squadron, the Nintendo 64 video game, Dead Dak was a cheat code. I forget what it did, but I remember that it was a cheat code. And I also noticed watching through that the call sign of Rogue 2 and Rogue 3 between Zev and Wedge flips a couple times, because Zev starts out at Rogue 2. Then Luke is talking to Wedge and says something about hold it steady, Rogue 2, when he's actually Rogue 3. And I don't know how Wedge got a demotion, but I went back and watched that scene a couple times. Like, he did say Rogue 2 and Rogue 3. That's an inconsistency.
Because Wedge to me has always been Rogue 3, so I didn't even. Because
was he red?
Yeah.
Was he Red 3?
Rogue 3? Was he Red 3?
Was he Red 3? He wasn't.
No, I don't remember.
Red 3 was Porkins, right?
I think so. Yeah,
Anyway,
that makes sense.
The
Rogue now.
snow speeder assault with the AT-ATs, the AT-ATs, the all-terrain assault transports, iconic moment in film history, in action film history.
Yeah, and
it's great.
Dak says a really cool line to Luke. You feeling all right, sir? Because he knows Luke's been injured. Luke's like, I'm feeling great, man. How are you? And he's like, if I could take on the whole Empire by myself. And you kind of see Luke look at the ground. He's like, I know what you mean. So like, Luke's like, I've been
Luke
there.
Looks at the ground and is like, this kid is dead in the next 15 minutes.
Yeah, Luke's like, that was me 3 years and 2 weeks ago. So, and it's just so interesting, like that one line like that can tell quite a story about Luke, how far he's come just from where we saw him as a farm boy. So they start the attack on the AT-ATs, and they can't do any damage to them. That armor's too strong for blasters. So Luke gives a suggestion: go for the legs, use your harpoons and tow cables. Maybe that'll bring him down. Luke's showing his ingenuity.
But then Dak sucks and can't figure it out and then
gets
dies. So then Good Shot Jansen has to do it as Wedge's gunner. I swear, you remember playing Rogue Squadron? Like flying the snowspeeder around the AT-ATs and those early 3D single analog stick? That was hard.
You do the same thing in Shadows of the Empire.
Yeah, it was hard.
I think it's even harder in Shadows of the Empire.
Oh, it was absolutely harder in Shadows. It got a little better.
It was
for Rogue Squadron.
It was like clunkier, but also
you couldn't
tougher.
go too high or too low or too close or too far.
You just start over. Man, so Luke's co-pilot's dead. Luke ends up escorting Wedge in, and Wedge gets a run on a walker and kills one. But then Luke takes another run with Rogue 2 in, and Luke ends up getting shot. So does Rogue 2. Luke crashes. He has to get out of this snowspeeder before the walker crushes him.
Good thing he has a grappling hook.
Do you mean to do something in the future with that?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, right now he's just dodging, jumps out of the way. Now we go back to Han and Leia. Han's grabbing Leia. He's like, you're coming out here with me because you're still here. He kind of pulls Leia away from her control panels. It's really interesting. She's still working, and he's like, no, we're going. So Han, Leia, Chewie, 3PO escape.
Trivia time. What's the name of the only other female in this movie to have a speaking role?
Torrin Farr.
God, you're good.
Man, that was on the spot. I wasn't ready for that.
You're good. Stand by. Iron control. Fire. Well done, sir.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So Vader comes after Han, Leia, and 3PO, and Han pulls out the auxiliary gunnery guns, takes out the E-Web snowtroopers, which is so cool because there's something these we've never seen stormtroopers set up these giant turrets before.
Yeah.
And Han's just blowing them away. And Han gets out. They escape. Vader just watches the Falcon as it flies away.
I want to take a quick detour. Have you seen the deleted scenes about the Wampa invasion of the base that was originally intended to happen at the same time as the Imperial invasion?
Yes.
So there's a scene where 3PO knows there's a Wampa behind a doorway, and he rips the warning sticker off. I made a note watching through this the other day.
Yeah.
There's the Wampa sticker. They left that out because it looks super cheesy. This door opening and the Wampa like puppet arm reaching through and grabbing a stormtrooper. But I made the note that the Wampa sticker is still there, closing off this hallway as "Don't go this way. There's Wampas down here."
Yeah, like we drilled the wrong direction and we ran into a cave of them. So
yeah,
just
exactly.
Lock that door.
So in the deleted scene, Vader opens that door, and one of his snow troopers gets like just ripped up by a Wampa. Because 3PO pulls the warning sticker off of that door. So
that is a 3PO
I thought that was great
a little bit.
That the sticker was still in there.
I love it. Yeah. So, man, yeah, I probably would have taken a drop in tone if they left that in.
It was a little too comical, a little too Muppety, but I appreciate the intent.
Yeah, for sure. So at this point, we see Luke with his grappling hook do something very heroic where he ends up grappling at the top belly of a walker, cuts open a hole with his lightsaber. It's really cool to see him use his lightsaber in his pilot uniform, just cool looking. And he throws a grenade inside, drops the grappling hook off, and you see a walker blow up from the inside out.
He sure has no issue falling down from 30 meters high onto the snow.
He is a Jedi.
No, okay. That's why he can do that, and it hurts when I fall down snowboarding. Okay.
Actually, at this point, I don't think he can probably brace himself on that fall. But by the end of this film, he could.
Okay.
Because we see that in the fight.
If I go to my hater comparison section of my notes here.
Here we go.
A complaint I've seen about The Last Jedi is after Rose and Finn have crashed and they do their thing, and how do they get back to the base without being killed? They're just people standing out against the white surface of the planet Crate. How do none of these walkers shoot the orange jumpsuit of Luke Skywalker against the white snow of the planet Hoth?
Okay.
It has no bearing on the story of Empire Strikes Back. It's just it's something I saw like last week. That's why I even put it in the notes of another complaint about The Last Jedi. I was like, really? You're going to complain about that?
Yeah, let's complain about other things than Last Jedi before that.
I agree. There's plenty to complain about there. Anyway, Luke takes out an AT-AT. He's a badass, and they're going back. And
these baby AT-ATs, because the Last Jedi AT-ATs are massive.
The first transport's away. Luke gets to his X-Wing with R2.
R2's there. It's awesome. 3PO says his goodbyes to R2, actually, a couple minutes earlier to mention it. He's like, please take care of Master Luke and take care of yourself. And R2 says something, and 3PO's like, oh, dear. This is all 3PO says. So something like R2's like, go away or something. So it's good. We get to Luke leaving Hoth, the Falcon leaving Hoth. The Falcon is now chased by 3 Star Destroyers and multiple TIE fighters, which I've got to mention, Mike, watching the despecialized edition was really refreshing because all the TIE fighters are very blue. And that's been dramatically muted on the...
It's muted. I think they were still blue in the version I watched, though. The Executor may not have been, but the TIE fighters definitely were.
The Executor is pure blue.
Here's another note I made. Luke is actually barely in the first 20 or 30 minutes of this film.
Because of his injuries?
Because he's captured by the Wampa, and he's dealing in the Bacta tank and everything. Most of the first 20, 30 minutes of this film is Echo Base and Han and Leia and Chewie.
Do you know what's interesting about that? That sounds like New Hope.
It is similar to New Hope, but where it differs is...
New Hope is not at all, though.
Well,
30 minutes.
This is maybe skipping ahead a little bit, but I made this note. Luke is barely in this movie with other human actors until the very end.
Right.
He's in there with puppeteers, especially in the scenes with Yoda. Like those are great. I'm
And
not saying
R2.
that.
R2,
And with R2, but he's not actually in there with in the movie with other humans until the very end in his scenes with Vader, and then when Leia rescues him.
Yeah, and you got to realize a lot of this movie is Luke's internal struggle, right? Because it's so much about his Force journey, if you want to call it that.
Well, so let's talk about
It's
that
very
Force,
interesting.
Force journey.
Yeah.
He gets to Dagobah.
Yeah, so Luke sets the course for Dagobah. Han and Leia are running from the Imperials, and R2's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm plotting a new course, and I'm gonna drive manual for a while." And R2 finds that weird, so I thought it's kind of a cool line that looks like, "No, I like to leave it on manual."
I like that
so,
one. I agree.
Yeah. So Luke gets to Dagobah, immediately goes to disaster. They run into crazy weather, inclement weather, and they crash. And Luke's like, "My scopes are dead. I got nothing." And they crash. They crash into the swamp. The X-Wings, 60% of it in the water. Luke jumps out. R2 jumps out. We see R2 with his little telescope.
which is great comedy. I love that.
Yeah, I do too. And then we see R2 get swallowed by some sort of snake, lizard, dragon, which we know to be a dragon snake from the EU. And it spits him
You're
out.
making that up.
No, that's what it's called.
That's
And
Snake Dragon,
snake.
also known as
Dragon
the Dragon
snake.
Snake. That's the old Star Wars EU in a nutshell, everybody.
Well, Yoda might have named it too. You never know. You'd just been like, "Oh, dragon snake." But he spits R2 out. Really interesting. This is my nerd showing right now. So in the
It's been
original
hanging out on the
versions,
Skype call for a while, but I wasn't going to say anything.
yeah, you're witnessing it now. So R2 gets spit out. He says something along the lines of, in the VHS despecialized editions, he says, "You're lucky you don't taste good." And then the special editions onward, he says something like, "You're lucky to get out of there."
Oh, I actually do remember that difference.
And
Yeah.
it's really bizarre change. I don't know if it's a comedy change or what. Both lines are fine. Both lines are the same execution by Mark.
It's a weird George change.
But just a change. So worth mentioning for you out there who maybe never lived without the special edition at 95, which was basically 25 years ago now, almost, Mike. So we're coming up on that. So that happens, and then Luke and R2 encounter Yoda, and Luke pulls around his blaster on Yoda, which now Luke has Han's blaster, the DL-44 style blaster, which is kind of cool. And Luke's got a whole
Super
new outfit.
powerful in Battlefront 2.
Yeah, and we haven't mentioned yet. Luke has a whole new outfit now because at this point he was in snow gear, then a pilot gear, which we've seen him before. Now he's in this sort of utilitarian jumpsuit, sort of Han Solo looking thing. A little bit less than the other Luke things we've seen. He's in the gray jumpsuit with a utility belt, with his lightsaber, a Han Solo holster and blaster, some pouches, things like that. And Yoda kind of messes with Luke for a while. We all know this. This is part of Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey sort of arc. This is like these.
Joseph Campbell may not agree with the note I took at this scene, but this shows the modern Twitter age that we live in. I wrote,
boy.
It takes big dick energy to make Yoda a puppet in this movie in 1980. And it absolutely did.
They kept doing it, and they were like, "We don't know if this is going to work." And man, Henson and Frank Oz coming together, you know what I mean? And also a lot of the men that worked on to create Yoda. Got to give them credit.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Yoda is great, but it took giant balls to do this in a major movie in 1980.
I know, right? And like, what a statement too. So like, this is very Joseph Campbell actually. Like, I believe it's the stranger on the road sort of thing. It's kind of like a biblical parable in a way, like the Good Samaritan sort of thing. But it's just the weird old guy, creepy weird guy on the side of the road that doesn't. That surely that's not the Jedi Master, right? You know what I mean? That's what Luke's thinking. That's what the audience is thinking. He's like, Yoda, you seek Yoda. It looks like you know him. He's like, take you to him, I will. But come, we must first eat. So this is after Yoda's messed with Luke. He's already gone
And
through
after
all his
Yoda
stuff.
has eaten his dinner.
Yeah, eating all his fish sticks. Smacked
He's got
R2 in the
fish
face.
sticks in the X-Wing.
Smacked R2 in the face about 20 times with the staff, with his little cane. He takes Luke to his house. It's a little hut. It's raining now. R2 has to stay outside. I'm not sure why. R2 has to stay
Because he
outside
can't
and
fit in the
watch.
front door.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. And R2's just watching. We see shots of R2's eye looking through the windows, which is really cute and really well done.
Yeah.
And Yoda's like, come on, we got to eat. I got this stew. Let's eat. And Luke's like, why can't we go see Yoda now? And he's like, good food, eat. And all this stuff. And he's really just testing Luke this entire time. And I have on here, let's see, eat first. Yeah. And I don't even know what I'm doing here. We're wasting our time, is what Luke says. And then Yoda lets out this huge sigh. I cannot teach this boy. Too impatient. Has too much of his father in him. And then you hear Obi-Wan's voice once again in that ethereal sound effect. He will learn patience, you know?
He will learn patience.
Yeah, and then you see Luke had the realization, Yoda? Ben, tell him I can be a Jedi. I'm ready, Ben. And then I love the shot where Luke stands up and realizes he's in this miniature hut and hits his head really hard on the roof.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And he's like, and then Yoda gives him a speech about being ready and patience. And you're too old to begin the training. And it's gonna be a waste.
Where have we heard that before?
Exactly. It's like poetry, Mike. And
Or a circular ring-like theory.
yes. So then we basically Obi-Wan and Yoda and Luke are talking, and Luke says, I won't fail you, I'm not afraid. And Obi-Wan, and then Yoda says, oh,
I love this line.
You will be. You will be. And you see just Luke just literally lean back like he's terrified of this little Muppet.
That's when Luke poops his pants.
Yeah. So then, of course, we go back to Han and Leia. They've made it now. They've hid inside an asteroid. And their romance is blossoming. You don't like me because I'm a scoundrel. You need more scoundrels in your life. I happen to like nice men. I'm a nice man. The kiss happens. 3PO conveniently comes in and, sir, cuts him off, you know.
So
right
I'm going to throw a random thing in here that was something that I noticed or something that I thought after seeing Solo before watching this. Like right after this happens, they fix the Falcon, and then Han's like, "Oh, the ANOAT system, Lando."
Yeah, Lando
is L3, who is now part of the Falcon's Navicomputer or ship brain. Is she taking them back to Lando?
It's a strong possibility, and I like it
because I actually liked Solo. It's my third favorite of the new Star Wars movies. I actually didn't like L3 that much. But the thought that like L3 is trying to get back to Lando, I actually think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Because they certainly have a relationship. I mean, you can't disregard the line later in the film that Captain Solo, your hyperdrive has the most peculiar dialect.
That's true. That fits definitely
that's a direct quote. And they've even said recently that yes, that's a direct reference to L3, and we took that in mind when creating her.
And that's even in the novelization for Last Jedi. L3 is indirectly mentioned.
Very nice. So yeah, so that's where Han and Leia are at. They have the Minok encounter. They escape the space slug because this is no cave, and they get right back into the thick of things with the Empire. This is a pretty iconic scene too, because we see Vader for the first time interact with the Emperor. And this is another moment where we can discuss, Mike, the despecialized and the specialized edition.
You got Rick Baker's wife in some weird makeup, and I
some
got
half chimpanzee. Like this, I heard that they superimposed some ape features, you know?
And I got Ian McDermott in his full prequel makeup.
Right. Yeah.
Which that's actually a change I'm fine with. Because
and some of the dialogue has been slightly changed.
The dialogue's a little different.
Not by much, though.
I'm totally fine with the change of Ian McDermott and the updated dialogue to fit things. Because when I was a kid, I didn't understand what was going on with the Emperor in the scene because the hologram technology was so bad and everything. So in the special edition, current canon, whatever you want to call it, I was like, oh, well, that's Sidious, and he's bossing Vader around again. I was fine with that.
Yeah, they actually made the change in the 2006, I believe, DVDs. They finalized that change and things like that. But yeah, it's no one can really argue with that change. But if you're watching despecialized edition like I am, you're getting theatrical. So there it is. So I had the original actor. So very bizarre.
Don't
we had
know
this.
how I drew the short straw in this, but that's fine.
So that happens, and he says the son of Skywalker might not become a Jedi, and Vader says he will join us or die, Master. So this has been established now as a plot that Vader is actively seeking out Skywalker, Luke. Before Vader kind of encountered this pilot. Oh, the Force is strong with him, but now Vader knows who he is. And what we don't know as an audience, what we know with our knowledge of Star Wars now, that Vader knows exactly what this means, that this is actually his offspring.
It's also established that the servant of the dark side is down on one knee to a larger version of the hologram of the Dark Lord. So like Snoke takes that to extremes in The Force Awakens, where he's like 30 feet tall, talking down to Kylo Ren and General Hux.
100%. No, I like it. And especially with the Ian McDermott version you're watching, he's dramatically bigger than he is in the VHS theatrical, even though he is bigger in the theatrical as well. But he's massive in the Empire Blu-ray. So at this point, we see Vader and Palpatine established, which is great. So now we go back to Dagobah. We have Luke and Yoda, which I think is a really cool film technique as well, the Master and Apprentice. And we have, how will you know the good side from the bad, is what Luke says.
Yeah.
And the Yoda says, when you're calm, at peace. I feel like these things are going to be important later, especially with The Last Jedi. So that's why I'm mentioning them now. Like I said, the Falcon escapes. It escapes the Star Destroyers now by the Han Solo Jango Fett trick, is what we'll call it. the trick that Obi-Wan pulls on Jango Fett, which, Boba Fett sees through, because we, of course, had the iconic, one of my all-time favorite scenes, bounty hunters, we don't need their scum. There'll be a substantial reward. Man, for those who find the Millennium Falcon, no disintegrations. And it's so good because it's so much world building. Like, I love all those characters, so I'm a little bit biased. Like, there's some of my all-time favorite Star Wars characters.
I think people that just love Star Wars are biased towards those characters.
Yeah, but that aside, like, Vader, who is one of the people who runs this galactic empire, is pulling upon criminals in the galaxy to find the Falcon, and he's paying them money. And we see this slew of, like, an assassin droid, a lizard man, a bug man, another droid. You know what I mean? Like, just
How
from an
dare
audience.
You call Forlom a bug man? He's a bug droid, sir.
That's what I meant, bug droid. But you get what I'm saying? Like, I know all their names, I know all their races, I know all this stuff, but just as a general audience member, you're saying, okay, this is a pretty rough galaxy, and even the Empire is willing to use money and resources to get the Falcon and Leia and Han. It's really cool.
Yeah, no, it definitely shows another like level of their desperation. Like, get that ship at all costs.
Yeah. Several officers have died now at this point trying to get the Falcon.
Well, and going back to Luke and Yoda on Dagobah, this is the part where
Luke's doing flips.
Luke's doing flips around. He's getting ready to go into the cave, but this is where Yoda says, and I wrote this down. I don't have the full quote, but he essentially says that the Force is for knowledge and defense, never attack. Knowledge and defense, never attack is the direct quote part, and we see that play out in The Last Jedi.
The finale.
Yeah,
Yes.
the finale, which
Probably the best part of the entire film.
I won't argue that it's friggin' great.
When they land on Crate onward, it's almost a near perfect film. A couple gripes, but that final
But you
thing.
see Luke fully embracing that Jedi ideology of
100%.
he's not attacking. It's for he knows what's going on. Knowledge, defense. He's holding off the First Order for everybody. I think that's great, and we see those seeds. Oh, I just bumped my pop filter here. We see those seeds planted here in Empire Strikes Back.
100%. And so this leads to another very important scene where Luke senses now the caves. It's like he's become aware. His force has kind of opened up, and he senses what's in there. He notices it. It looks like that place is basically a refuge of the dark side of the force, is what Yoda says.
Your weapons, you will not
Weapons,
need them.
you will not need them. And Luke still puts them on, which says a lot about his character. So Luke goes in the cave, which we hear is strong on the dark side of the force, which we'll see parallels in The Last Jedi as well. And he sees a vision, essentially, of Vader. Vader comes at him. He pulls out his lightsaber. He cuts off Vader's head immediately.
I'm not gonna lie, this part freaked me out and confused the crap out of me when I was a kid.
Another reason maybe it might be the lowest ranking of the kid films.
It could be why is Vader there? And then why is Luke's head inside this Vader helmet? I was just like, whoa, why is that happening? It's just scary dark side stuff that I don't understand.
Well, and you can obviously draw a lot of analogies here, what this means, and a lot of people have tackled this, and it's pretty simple, but it's also, I think, deeper than maybe just the surface level. The surface level this is foreshadowing to Luke being Vader's blood. But the real foreshadowing of this, I think, is that what Luke could become, that he could become Vader, he could become Anakin. He's the idealistic hero who's very powerful, who becomes the villain. And this is even shadowed in the next film, which we haven't got to yet, Mike. But when Luke, one of my favorite shots in all of Star Wars, actually my favorite shot in all of Star Wars, is when the music swells to the operatic singing, and you see Luke basically taking Vader to town in Return of the Jedi. It's the wide shot that cuts from right to left, and it's Luke just beating Vader all the way across the throne room.
Your favorite shot is Luke in anger.
Possibly, because I think it's the climax of the film, because he ends up cutting off Vader's hand. He has a moment to
But
breathe
we'll talk about
and realize.
that in 2 episodes. We have to talk about Shadows of the Empire before that.
But then he looks at his hand and he moves it around because, spoiler alert, it's robotic at this point. He sees Vader's hand's robotic.
What?
And this echoes that, I think. I think this echoes he's becoming his father, and he is his father. He's his blood. So it's more than just that. It's just more what he could become. So it's more than just that he's blood of Vader, and this is telling the audience in a subtle way. So I think it's also, this is what you could become if you fall down the dark side path. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
But after that,
the cave sequence is great, and it's got so many different meanings based on what point in your life you watch that at and everything. I love it, and one of the things I'm really interested in is the art of filmmaking, and how they did it, essentially, of these old movies, and they tried the fake Mark Hamill face that didn't work, and he just kind of ends up sticking his face up through the ground in the busted mask. I think that stuff's great.
yeah, I mean, that's always going to work the best, even though it's silly at times. That's good stuff. So immediately, there's a scene following this, which is one of the pivotal scenes of Luke's character. Luke is balancing on his arms. He makes R2 and the stones float, and Yoda's balancing on his leg. It's very like sensei Japanese, but it's also like you're seeing Luke's powers grow more. But then Luke has a vision. He has a vision of Han and Leia and Chewie and 3PO being hurt, being in pain in the city in the clouds.
And they make it clear that this is something that Luke is seeing that happens in the future for him.
Right. But Yoda also says the future, the past, old friends long gone. Like the Force will show us many things, right?
The reason I bring that up, though, is I'd seen on Reddit a while ago this idea that the entire reason that Vader tortures Han and doesn't ask him any questions is he knows that Luke's
going to feel it,
and it'll bring him to Cloud City. But if Luke is feeling that, you know, it's in the future for Luke, in the past for Vader, is that something that's actually happening, or is that just Vader torturing Luke and happening to get lucky, and bringing Luke to Cloud City?
I don't know. I think Vader's pretty confident in his abilities, but you're right. Han's like, they didn't even ask me any questions. I think it's cool because I think it ties Luke and Vader closer together than we thought they were at this point, But you're right. So then after this point, Yoda basically tells Luke he can pull the X-Wing out of the swamp. And Luke tries.
Size matters not.
Do or do not, there is no try. Luke says, okay. He gives it a shot. He says, you want the impossible. Moving stones is one thing. This is totally different. And Yoda says, no different, only different in your mind. You must unlearn what you have learned. So you must unlearn the ways of the world, your take on the world, because through the Force, you can see other places, other things, old friends long gone, like Yoda said. So then, of course, we have the moment where Yoda pulls the X-Wing out of the swamp. We hear this triumphant...
top 5 moments in Star Wars film. Like it's great. The puppet lifting the X-Wing out of the swamp, it's so awesome.
Yeah, that 3-finger like this, and that trumpet crescendo, man, da 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 da, at the end is so good. And then it lands, and Luke's touching it, like Luke's going around, like it's very like
I don't believe it. I have
like
to put my hands on it to believe.
Yeah, it's very like religious, like miracle, biblical-esque in the way where he's like, I have to touch and see, you know what I mean? And he goes, I don't believe it. And Yoda says, that is why you fail.
Boom.
And, yeah, failure is the best teacher, right? And so then we go back to more scenes of Han and Leia and Vader.
Well, and that's another note I wanted to make. Like, I feel like 2/3 of this movie is Han and Leia.
Potentially.
Like, Luke has so many important parts with Yoda and then his encounter with Vader at the end. But with how little he's featured in the beginning and everything, so much of this movie is Han and Leia and 3PO and Chewie and Lando and Cloud City and everything.
You know why, right? Because they're in danger. Luke's not in danger yet.
I get that. Like,
he's somewhere safe, so the plot has to move forward. They're setting up
what Luke has to come save. But it was something that I guess I hadn't thought about in a while when I watched it again yesterday. That Luke actually isn't in this movie with these other people just a whole lot.
Yeah. So then we go back to Luke again, and Luke's basically, Yoda says, decide you must on this Han Leia thing. Yoda says, you will destroy all for which they have fought and suffered if you go. And Luke's like, Han and Leia will die if I don't. And he's like, well, Yoda's like, that's just how it is. So at this point, Obi-Wan actually,
yup.
Obi-Wan physically appears at this point. He hasn't physically appeared since Hoth, since Luke had his little vision of him. And he's like, wait, Luke, don't do this. Finish your training. Stay with Yoda. And Luke's like, but Han and Leia will die if I don't. And Obi-Wan's, and they have this talk about Vader's power. Obi-Wan says, don't give in to hate. That leads to the dark side. And,
and he very sheepishly holds his hands up. He's like, wait, Luke, don't do it.
Yeah. Look at my trimmed beard. And it's not quite as long as the first movie. Don't worry. This is how I looked when I died. So it's really, he has his 2 mentors right there. It looks like, I promise I will return and finish what I began. Just give me time. And Yoda's kind of look at the ground like, man, he doesn't get it. And they say Vader's really strong on the dark side of the Force. Don't give in to hate when you fight him and all this stuff. And Luke says, I'll return, I promise. R2 fired the converters, and they go. And then Obi-Wan says, that boy was our last hope.
No, and there is another.
Yeah, and I love that
shot. And he's
of
not talking about Mara Jade. He's talking about effing Leia. Shut up, all you Legends fans. Mara Jade doesn't mean anything. He's talking about Leia.
This is true. Someone who loves Mara Jade, this is true. No, he's definitely talking about Leia because this is the Skywalker storyline. this shot is so good. You literally see Obi-Wan and Yoda almost in pure darkness. You actually see Obi-Wan fade out to nothing. Like he's like, well, I only appeared to show myself to Luke. And then you see the red glow of the X-Wing on Yoda's face. I love it so much. Yeah, the headlights of the X-Wing too. They pan across, because it's turning and leaving. So it's good stuff. So
Luke gets back to Cloud City on Bespin. He falls into the trap Vader set for him. I'm very proud of myself for not talking about Lando at length through this episode like I really want to.
you've got to mention him briefly though. He betrays Han and Leia, and Elena's like, "They got
For
here
the good
before
of
you
the
did."
people of Cloud City. For the good of people like Wilro Hood, who just want to make homemade ice cream.
Oh man, do we want to talk about Wilrow Hood now? I guess we have to now. This is the only time we can talk about him. Well, let's get to him in about 5 minutes when we get to that scene.
Okay.
But you're right. Lando betrays Han, and I love this where Han opens the door. Vader's there. Han immediately starts shooting at Vader
such a great scene. Vader
as fast as he can
through his hand.
Pulls a gun to him. We'd be honored if you join us. Then Boba Fett comes around the corner. This means business, and I love the line where Lando's like, "I'm sorry they got here just right before you did. I'm sorry." And Han's like, "I'm sorry too." Classic Han. And Han gets tortured. Chewie gets tortured by the sirens.
They didn't even ask him any questions.
Chewie puts back together 3PO because 3PO and this whole arc gets destroyed because he wanders into a closet he shouldn't go into.
No.
It's very 3PO-esque. You also see the destroyed IG-88 body in the corner of the junkyard room.
Do you remember which IG that is? A, B, C, or D?
It's definitely not A. It's definitely not. It's C, because B is the bounty hunter, the primary one, the one on the executor. A is the one that stays back at the mainframe, controls them. So I think it's C or D, 100%.
I try and trip this guy up, and he gets it every time.
I mean, you've read Tales from the Bounty Hunters like 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. So I totally believe you. Good job, sir.
But it is an interesting little Easter egg. Another weird Easter egg is IG-8's head is all the beer taps in the original cantina.
I do know that. I remember that from when we went to Celebration in 2015.
Yeah. Isn't that so great? But weird.
God, we've been talking about Star Wars so long, my voice is starting to go.
It's okay. So Han and Leia are betrayed. Luke ends up showing up, and Leia screams, "Luke, it's a trap. Don't. It's a trap."
Exactly. She is the OG. It's a trap person. Like, I love Admiral Akbar. I've got art in my house dedicated to Admiral Akbar.
Oh, yes.
But the first person to talk about things being a trap is actually Leia in Empire Strikes Back.
Man, Akbar is so good. Good stuff. But so Luke at this point is confronted by Vader, and Vader's plan is to carbonate Luke just like he did to Han, which I haven't mentioned yet. But of course, Han
going to put him in a CO3 with a -2 charge. That's a chemistry teacher joke, people.
So Han gets frozen. Thank God he survives. Han's like, "The Empire will compensate you, Boba Fett, if he dies. Take him to Jabba Hutt." And that's when we had the iconic "I love you, I know" line. So Luke is now encountering Vader in here, and Vader's goal is to freeze him in carbonite and deliver him to the Emperor, Vader's words.
Most impressive.
What does he say to Luke before "You're not a Jedi yet"? The Force is with you, young Skywalker.
Obi-Wan has trained you well, but you are not a Jedi yet.
He says the Force is with
Something
you, young
like that.
Skywalker. Yeah, the Force is with you, young Skywalker, but you're not a Jedi yet. And yeah, he tries to freeze Luke. Luke does the Force jump out of the carbonite canyon.
Pretty much.
Impressive, most impressive. And of course, they fight several locations. They fight in the generator hallway, which we got to mention you do see in my favorite scene in The Force Awakens, which is Rey's vision. And
we're going to talk about that vision a lot, by the way, because I got thoughts on it.
I think there's a lot to talk about. But you see Rey in that hallway, right? From Empire?
I was watching and I didn't see Rey standing down the hall watching them. So
yeah, that'll be the next Blu-ray. Don't worry. We already have Hayden.
That's the 4K
campfire.
Ultra version.
So, but yeah, Ray's vision is that hallway. We see Luke fight Vader. Luke does his best, but Vader's really toying with him the whole time. Several times you see Vader fighting with one saber, like one arm, just like nothing. This is Anakin Skywalker, who used to be the best swordsman in the galaxy. So Vader ends up knocking all the things through the Force at Luke. Luke falls out the window. Then they fight on the bridge with the wind. It's so iconic. You're beaten. It's useless to resist. Don't let yourself be destroyed as Obi-Wan did, is what Vader says to him. They get in this really, really intense fight. We haven't seen anything like this in the films yet, because the Obi-Wan Vader fight was nothing like this. Luke hits Vader on the shoulder.
The ventilation ducts in this
I don't
scene,
know.
by the way.
I don't know.
Because none of it makes sense.
It makes for a great fight, though.
But no disagreement, but I can jump off this platform and fall into a slide.
You're jumping ahead
It turns
too far,
into
Mike.
a ventilation duct that falls out the bottom of the city.
Luke hits Vader on the shoulder. You hear Vader actually kind of yell a little bit, which is cool. Then Vader cuts off
because that's part of Vader that was still organic or human, right? Like it was
sure.
elbow down, basically, where Obi-Wan come off. He was like, "Oh shit, he cut me in the shoulder,
collarbone, ow."
Yeah,
My collarbone's intact. So then Vader cuts off. You see like a power coupling. And
He's
then,
like, I'll show you. I'll cut your effing hand off, kid.
And then Luke's hand
Boop.
is gone. We hear Luke scream. We have Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father. And Luke says, he told me enough. And then he backs up further away. He told me you killed him. And the line is not, Luke, I am your father. That's a misstep of our culture, right? It's, no, I am your father. And then you see Luke have the realization that the Imperial March swells, right? And the theme.
That's not true.
That's impossible.
And
then he
Mark,
says,
Mark
"Search your
twists
feelings."
his face up in the worst way possible.
It's pretty intense. And he says, search your feelings, you know it to be true. And he reaches into the Force, all the good stuff. And then he screams the long no, which,
No.
a lot of good no's in Star Wars. Luke, we could join forces. We could destroy the Emperor. We could rule the galaxy as father and son. Son, come with me is the only way. And Luke makes a choice here in his arc. He could join Vader or just jump off this cliff and maybe die. But he just jumps off. Because he knows that, he took the advice from his masters, like Vader is, and he doesn't even know what to think at this point. So then Luke falls down the ventilation shaft. At this point, Lando's turned good. Right, Mike?
He was never bad. Don't you say he's turned good.
So Lando is good. Han's gone. Lando and Leia are flying the Falcon now. And at this point, Luke is hanging on for his dear life with one hand on the weather vane.
And
of
this
Cloud
is where
City.
we see Luke reach out to Leia through the Force, right?
Right, which we will see again in the future, which is great. And he's like, Leia, please. And first he says, Ben. And he gets nothing. Because if you remember on Dagobah, I don't know if you remember this on Dagobah, Mike, but Obi-Wan says, if you face Vader alone, choose to face Vader, I cannot intervene.
Yeah, I do remember that. I was thinking,
kind of a
why? Why
love.
can't you?
It's kind of a hard love thing. He's like, if you're going to ignore my advice and not stay here with Yoda, I'm just going to cross my arms and not help you. No, I think it's partially that, and I think it's partially spiritual in some way, something about the Force. I don't know, but he reaches out, and then so he stops saying Ben, and he starts saying Leia, and Leia's like, Luke. She's like, we have to go back, and Lando's like, what about those fighters? And she's like, we have to go back, and Lando's like, what about those fighters? And then Chewie screams at him. He's like, all right, we're going, which I love. Lando gets Luke. He gets him with the little carabiner, locks him in, pulls him in. They puts him in the sick bay. He's got the little back to tank clasp thing on his wrist with the tubes going to it.
And then Lando wears Han's clothes.
We're not there yet, but you're right. It's coming. It's creepy, but it's good too. And that'll go into Shadows of the Empire pretty smoothly. So then they fly the Falcon off Bespin towards the Executor, which is Vader's flagship. And Luke says something along the lines of Vader's on that ship, because we actually see Vader fly his shuttle to the Executor. Another thing not in the VHS theatrical editions. So in the specialized edition, Mike, that you just watched, Vader says, "Prepare my shuttle," and it's a smoother
It's true.
transition. Originally, he kind of teleported to his flagship. You assume he flew a fighter or a shuttle to his flagship, but you don't know. In the special edition, they make that very clear. They just say, "Prepare my shuttle," and you see a shuttle go, and they fly past the executor, and Vader's reaching out to Luke and says, "Luke, son, it is the only way. Join me." And Luke just keeps repeating over and over again with his eyes closed, "Ben, why didn't you tell me? Ben, why didn't you tell me?"
Yeah.
And it's really strong. It's really good because Luke's battered. His face is bruised, bloody. He's missing a hand. His hair is crazy. Lando and Leia are driving the Falcon. And then Vader says to, "Your men have disabled the hyperdrive on the Millennium Falcon, right?" And his officers say yes. And then they make the jump to hyperspace because R2 fixes it. And they make it out, and Vader does not look pleased. So then we go to the
to say the least.
Yeah. And we know what happens when he's not pleased to officers. Then we see the Rebel fleet, the remnants of it. We see several transports, Nebulon B cruisers, some Corellian corvettes, and several fighters. And we see the Falcon docked there. Then we see Lando, Mike, in Han's clothes
That's when he's wearing his clothes, yeah.
and it's so Lando to wear the Han Solo low cut chest hair shirt, and Lando has it buttoned all the way to the top button.
The whole reason they brought Billy D. Williams on,
Where the top button all the way at the top.
it was not the top button. It was they didn't know if Harrison would sign his contract and come back for episode 6. So they're like, we need a fallback to have this type of character in case Harrison's not there. And Billy D's great.
He is so great. Man, he's so great. But so him and Chewie are in the Falcon. They're talking to Leia and Luke. You see Luke get his new hand put on. Then you see the medical droid stabbing his hand, making sure his feeling is there, right? And then you see him closing up the hand. Very iconic, beautiful ending to this dark film. The rebellion is in shambles. Lando and Chewie are going to go find Han.
And something I either remember from the EU or the novelization of the book or something that I really loved is that the Empire couldn't track them because they went outside of the gravitic plane of the galaxy. Like they went, like not on the galactic plane. They went above and outside of the galaxy to hide.
At this point, the rebels are Chewie and Lando.
Right, but the entire rebel fleet, and you see
okay.
this. You see this in the last scene.
They're like way
outside the galaxy because they are above the galactic plane, looking down on the galaxy, and the Empire wouldn't think to look for them there because it puts that strain on the ships for them to get there. And I thought that was super cool.
Interesting. Okay, but yeah, we see the iconic shot with Leia, 3PO, and R2, and Luke, and they're kind of all shoulder to shoulder, arm to arm, like they're all buddies. They're a family, right? They're family misfits, and they watch Lando and Chewie fly towards the center of the galaxy, which is more like Coruscant and stuff like that.
Right, they're flying back down towards the galactic core, towards the plane of the galaxy.
Right. So, and we're left with the thought that, well, the rebellion survived, but it's barely hanging on. Han we don't know. He's being taken to this gangster, and Luke learned the awful truth. And this is where we're at. But this is a great finish to Act 2.
That's right. So going back to our questions that we ask every episode, does this fit with the Luke we meet in The Last Jedi? And I think it does, because the Luke we met in The Last Jedi has seen the ups and downs, of the galaxy. He's seen the good and the bad. Things swing each direction.
Right.
He's seen the galaxy for, the society of the galaxy go good or bad and back.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. And I think this is, I think I'm most interested in this question, Mike, in Return of the Jedi. Does that make sense?
That's a couple episodes away, but you're all right. Totally valid.
It's probably the most stark difference, because by the end of, we'll get there, but by the end of Return of the Jedi, I mean, Luke is so different from me as an Empire, right? You're right. In Empire, he's very conflicted. He's very in the middle. He has a lot of failures with the cave, as Yoda says. Remember your failure at the cave. Remember your failure at the cave. he also fails kind of his friends because he ends up going to help them. Han doesn't make it out. He ends up getting injured, losing his hand. He learns that Vader's his father. He's tempted by this idea of Vader being his father, and he doesn't trust Ben anymore. Obi-Wan, like, I mean, this a lot of things happen for him. So yeah, I can see this being congruent with the Last Jedi, with his stance on the world and things like that. And a lot of he does echo a lot of things Yoda says, which is positive for me.
So, one other point I wanted to make. We've covered pretty much everything I wrote down in my notes. But ever since Solo, the standalone film came out, this line has new meaning. When Han and Lando were talking to each other about the Falcon, you lost her to me fair and square, Han says to Lando.
Oh yeah,
That means something different now because Lando was the one obviously cheating and Han caught him.
fair and square.
Took the card out of his sleeve or whatever. I thought that was great.
Oh, I did too. Yeah, and I love the interaction of the two of them, where the Lando basically pretend assaults him at the beginning, and Hans has his fists up, ready to fight
Got a lot of guts coming back here.
after what you pulled, and then they kind of go into the hug after that. And Leia, 3PO, and Chewie look very apprehensive, but you're right. Solo does open a lot of that, but that's Empire. That's Empire, guys. I mean, that's a big one.
So I mentioned in our last episode that Jesse wouldn't like my thoughts on this. I actually like this movie less now, having watched it in the current context of all the Star Wars canon.
What does that mean?
It doesn't mean I hate it, but I don't think it's my favorite anymore. I sort of see what the kids are saying when they say it's sort of slow, the pace is kind of boring.
Oh
and
my!
I don't feel that.
Oh my!
I'll
I'll preface. I'll tell you, it's
I get
it's a
that the
character
stakes
film, right?
are high.
Does that make sense? Though it's a character film.
I don't disagree, but
Like every second act of any good arc is, right? I mean, like, stuff happens to the rebellion in this. Like, bad stuff happens
The
to the
stakes
rebellion.
are high and all that. I get that, but Luke is on screen with other humans for like 8 minutes out of the entire movie, and it definitely stuck out to me when I watched it this time. And it doesn't. I hate to say this in
Oh no!
recorded format online where it's in perpetuity forever. I think I might like The Last Jedi better than
No.
this.
You're not allowed to say that.
you don't tell me what I'm allowed to say.
How many times have
But-
you seen The Last Jedi now? Let's talk about that.
Oh God, I've seen it at least 20. I've
20?
Yeah, dude, I've watched that movie at least like once a week since it came out.
Oh my! Well,
I am fascinated by The Last Jedi and the division and all that stuff.
so am I. So am I. Seriously. I'm fascinated why he doesn't give me the same feelings all these other movies do. Does that make sense?
No, I absolutely agree. That's why we started this podcast.
I
We
know.
wanted to figure out what
No,
why
no,
people
but
have
you
such
knowing
different
me,
views
you
about it.
knowing me, you have to understand, like, that's a weird thing because even episode 2 gave me some of those feelings. You know what I'm saying?
Episode 2 gave me zero feelings.
No, that's not true. Not when you saw it. No, I'm not going to defend episode 2 here at all. I'm just saying The Last Jedi for me, Mike, is a roller coaster. And not in the good way. It
Well,
is
you
so
don't like
high.
roller coasters.
It-
Then. I love roller
no,
coasters.
it is so high and then so low and jumps back to so high again. And that is jarring for me.
I don't disagree with that sentiment, but let's move on through this episode where we're somewhat focusing on Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
Hey, did you see that Billy D canceled a Comic-Con appearance? I forget
no.
where,
Oh,
but
no.
because he's supposedly like getting back in shape to film for Episode 9. Is Lando coming back for Episode 9?
Is this all rumors or is this abated
I
by
mean,
fact?
I've seen this put together on like makingstarwars.com or done that wherever it is. But Lando did, or Billy D did cancel a Comic-Con appearance, and he has admitted to an increased like workout
Oh,
regimen and
man.
everything.
I would love that so much. God.
Honestly, as much as we just said, I love The Last Jedi. the part filled by the Master Codebreaker or by Maz Kanata should have been Lando.
Oh yeah, 100%,
I 100% agree with that.
100%.
But if we get more Lando in episode 9 that we wouldn't have gotten, because if he'd been in episode 8, I'm okay with that also. So if Lando does appear in episode 9, how do you want to see him in episode 9?
That's interesting because, and as you know from the EU, he takes a lot of he's very like the old Lando and the new Lando in the EU, which I think is good. He goes back to the smuggler kind of businessman life, but then he comes back to the rebellion eventually by the new Jedi Order time period.
The five or six issue run of Lando pre-Palpatine or whatever. I think that that's a very great limited run in the Marvel Comics line.
The new ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't got to read those yet.
I'm hoping that in episode 9, Lando comes back. Not as the General Calrissian or the guy who knew a few maneuvers at the Battle of Tanab, but he's got some resources that can actually help the Resistance.
So it's kind of both. It's kind of that both we're talking about.
Yeah. But I hope it's also, a pivotal role that's not more than fan service.
It'd be kind of awesome if he showed up at a battle, but with smugglers.
Yeah, that also
like
great.
Like he had some uglies and stuff. If you remember the ugly fighters, just stuff like that.
Having being fresh off of a podcast for a year and a half about the X-Wing miniatures game and people wanting the uglies, yes, I'm very, very well versed with them.
Like he shows up as some sort of freighter, but he has uglies and other fighters with him. That'd be cool. Just out of nowhere, like, hey, you guys are in my jurisdiction of space, that sort of thing. But that's so cool that he might be coming back. I really thought they were going to do that poetry thing where he was in the second one.
Actually, the one regret I have of the Star Wars Celebration that we went to a couple of years ago, was that my flight left before the Billy D Lando panel or whatever. I didn't get to see it.
I did get to see some of that, which was good.
So in our preview episode, we talked about the Dejaric Table, a segment where we're going to talk about news from the Star Wars video games or news from the HoloNet, where we talk about current Star Wars events. We're going to shove those segments into future episodes of the Canon Cantina podcast because these first two episodes are pretty full of information from A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. So we're going to talk about the Masters of Terrakazi because they showed up in the Solo film. We're going to talk about George's vision for the sequel trilogy. And we're also going to talk about things that aren't so pretty, like things that we don't serve their kind here, like the treatment of Ahmed Best after episode 1. Those things are absolutely going to make an appearance in our podcast, The Canon Cantina, but we just don't have time for them right now.
Right. We're going to keep these episodes for you guys concise and hopefully interesting.
As best as we can.
But Mike, let's go ahead and talk about the places people can find us right now on social media and spread the news of our show and hopefully link in and talk to us about these episodes.
That's right. You can find us on Facebook. We've got a page called The Canon Cantina. You can find us on Twitter at Canon Cantina. And if you want to send us an email, it's canoncantina@gmail.com. Canon has one N in all of these instances because it's canon story terms, not CANNON like the pirate gun or whatever.
Ah, yes.
So we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Canon Cantina where we talked about The Empire Strikes Back. Next week, join us when we go outside of the realm of the Star Wars films and we tackle the first major expanded universe.
Multimedia.
Multimedia, exactly. Multimedia canon source in terms of the Legends timeline. Shadows of the Empire. We're going to talk the book, the comic, the video game.
The novel.
I said the book to start. Come on, give me a break.
Just give you a hard time. Yeah, the audiobook as well. There's a lot of crazy things with this. And we talk about this gap between Empire and Return of the Jedi. And we see Luke grow a lot as a Jedi in this, and a lot of that is in Shadows of the Empire. So we're going to mention and dive deep into this. And you guys that don't know about Shadows of the Empire, I'm excited to tell you about it.
Anyway,
So
thank you for joining us here in the Canon Cantina. We hope you join us next week when we talk about Shadows of the Empire. Cheers, everybody.
may the force be with you, and cheers.
Boring conversation anyway.